Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, today we're going to be a hardcore helmet and do a prediction for Jamal James versus Radzhab Butaev. This fight goes down on the 30th of October. It's a PBC show. It takes place in Las Vegas. And Jamal James is putting his WBA regular welterweight title on the line. Bullshit baby belt aside, this is a really good fight, hence why I'm making a prediction video for it. I don't really see too many people talking about this fight, which is a shame, because if you like violence, I think this fight more than likely will deliver. On paper at least, it should be a really fun fight. Now I've said that, more than likely it's going to be a fucking bore fest, but in all seriousness, I think this one's going to be fun. So yeah, let's briefly break down the tale of the tape. And we'll start with the champion, Jamal James. Jamal James has a record of 27 wins, 1 defeat, 0 draws, 12 of his 27 wins coming by way of knockout. Radzhab Butaev has a record of 13-0, 10 of his 13 wins coming by way of knockout. It is worth mentioning he actually lost to Alexander Bezbutin in Monaco a couple of years ago, but after that fight, Bezbutin tested positive for a PED, and that fight was changed to a no contest. And by the way, PEDs aside, Bezbutin is a really talented fighter, and Butaev ran him really close, so make of that what you will. But nevertheless, Jamal James is a tall welterweight. He's listed as 6'2" with a 70-inch reach, whereas Radzhab Butaev is listed as 5'10.5" with a 72-inch reach. So Jamal James is 3.5 inches taller, but Radzhab Butaev actually has a 2-inch reach advantage. For such a tall guy, Jamal James doesn't have the longest arms, but he is definitely the bigger man in there. Both of these guys are orthodox fighters. Jamal James is 33 years old, whereas Radzhab Butaev is 27 years old. So Butaev does have the advantage of youth going into this fight. He's considerably the younger man, so maybe he's fresher. And bear in mind, Jamal James has had quite a few wars in his career to date. But having said that, on the flip side, Jamal James is definitely more experienced in the pro ranks. Jamal James has definitely fought a higher level of competition. Butaev really has only fought Bezbutin in terms of like elite level competition, whereas Jamal James has fought guys like Thomas Delorme, Abel Ramos, Yordenis Ugas. You know, he's fought better competition. He's not fought a murderer's row, but he's fought better competition. So Butaev has the advantage of youth. Maybe he's fresher, but Jamal James is more experienced. So now the tale of the tape is out of the way, let's briefly break down the stylistic matchup, what I believe each guy should do to win, and at the end of the video, I will make my official prediction. I guess I'll start with Jamal James. Now Jamal James is a very tall welterweight, and you would imagine that Jamal James is the boxer type, likes to get behind his jab and move, but really that's not the case. Jamal James is a guy who likes to give up his advantages and basically trade with you. He likes to exchange hooks, he likes to get on your chest, throw uppercuts through the middle, and basically try to outwork you. He's quite an aggressive fighter really, but in this fight, I've got to be honest, I think that style could be his undoing. I think he needs to change it up going into this fight. Radzhab Butaev is a more heavy-handed guy. I think he's a more skilled pressure fighter, a more skilled aggressive fighter. So for me, Jamal James approaching the fight in his usual manner could result in him getting hurt and potentially knocked out. So he needs to switch things up. As far as I'm concerned, he needs to go into this fight and be a lot more conservative, a lot more circumspect than he usually is. None of that sitting on your opponent's chest, trading punches, none of that sitting on the ropes trying to counter, because that could lead to Jamal James getting hurt. I think Jamal James in this fight needs to be boxing off that back foot, behind the jab, making Radzhab Butaev come forwards and attempt to cut the ring off. One thing I've noticed about Butaev is he's not great at throwing power punches while he's moving forwards. He likes it when a guy's stationary, standing with him or on the ropes. That's when he can really load up and land hurtful and accurate punches. So I think Jamal James in this fight needs to be boxing behind the jab and essentially taking the play away from Radzhab Butaev, try to circle away from Butaev's right hand and essentially keep him off balance in this fight so that he's not set to throw those big power punches. Because when you trade with Butaev, he's got the heavier hands in this certain matchup, and also Butaev has good accuracy and underrated timing as far as I'm concerned. So for me, it's up to Jamal James to keep his legs moving and essentially be elusive. I know he's not done that in many pro fights, but I do believe he's got the athleticism to carry out that sort of game plan. When he wants to move in the ring, he actually does move quite quickly, and when he uses that jab, which he doesn't use enough, it is quite quick, it is quite snappy, and he needs to be very consistent with that punch in this fight, because Butaev especially really likes to load up with power punches, and sometimes he himself doesn't utilise that jab to close the distance and set up his own punches. So a good consistent jab for Jamal James while moving, and especially moving away from that right hand of Butaev, could be very important for him. Ultimately, I think Jamal James needs to be a lot more circumspect than he usually is, because if he gets in a war with Butaev, I've got a strong suspicion that he comes off second best. Jamal James, he's a big dude, he's relatively strong, but he's not a big puncher. And defensively, when he opens up, Jamal James is there to be hit. In particular with the overhand right, which is one of Butaev's best punches. So, yeah, for me, Jamal James needs to be a lot more defensively aware in this fight, needs to utilise lateral movement, utilise the jab, and keep Butaev guessing, keep Butaev changing in direction, and most importantly, keep Butaev off balance. And that for me gives Jamal James the best chance of winning this fight. Only problem is, he doesn't usually carry out that style. He likes to get involved in a tear-up, so we'll see what happens there. As for Radzhab Butaev, the first thing I want to see him implement in this fight, again, is a more consistent jab. Butaev is a guy who likes to lead with power punches a lot of the time, and he really neglects that jab. What he does do as he's inching forwards, he'll basically hold out his lead hand to measure the distance and distract his opponents, and when he's got his distance down, then he'll throw his power shots. But I want to see less of that and a more consistent ramrod jab as he's coming forwards and applying pressure. Butaev does have a good jab when he throws it, and it's quite powerful, but for me, it's not consistent enough, and I want to see a more consistent jab in this fight so that he can effectively close range, and also to set up his power punches to body and head. And that's another area in which Butaev really needs to concentrate on, and that is the body of Jamal James. There's a lot of it to aim at. You know, Jamal James is a long, gangly dude. He's quite skinny. I want to see Radzhab Butaev really work that body, really give that body a working over. That is one of Butaev's best assets, is the body punching. Great hooks to the body, occasionally the uppercuts to the body. When he's at mid-range, I want to really see him load up with those shots and try and take the legs away from Jamal James and basically make Jamal James engage in a slugfest, because if he can get Jamal James invested in a war, I believe Butaev's got the artillery to really make the difference in this fight, and he needs to look out for his overhand right. I believe Jamal James is very open for that shot, in particular when Jamal James throws combinations. One of the combinations that Jamal James likes to use is basically a left hook, right hook combination. He basically spams his hooks and doesn't really throw many other punches. And when he does this, he really squares up and he's open for a good overhand right or a short right hand down the pipe. So Radzhab Butaev, again, the overhand right in this fight could be key, especially if he gets Jamal James into a bit of a slugfest, a bit of a war. He needs to be looking out for that shot, because if Jamal James does get involved, it's going to be there. So he needs to look out for that shot. One other thing I want to see Butaev do in this fight is feint as he's coming forwards. And I've actually seen him do that in a few fights. He'll throw like hand feints, shoulder feints, and even sometimes head feints. I want to see him do this while fighting on the front foot to basically try and freeze Jamal James and make Jamal James take the lead, and then obviously counter from there. Try and draw the lead of Jamal James and then counter while fighting on the front foot. Because Jamal James, to me, he's a bit of a twitchy fighter. He will react to what his opponents are doing. So feinting against a guy like that could be very beneficial. Again, Butaev is not great at punching on the front foot, but if he could apply pressure, throw the feint, and then make Jamal James set his feet and react, and then counter from there, it could be very effective, because Butaev does actually have quite good timing and he's quite accurate with his shots. So I want to see some of that feint game from Butaev in this fight to try and set up those big power shots, set some traps, draw the lead, and then counter. I want to see more of that from Butaev. I still don't think Butaev's really utilised his counter-punch ability to its full effect, and I want to see that in this fight. So that's what I want to see from Butaev. To me, he's got to be the guy who really makes this a dogfight. I think Jamal James anyway might engage him in that sort of fight. That's his style. But if anybody's going to move in this fight, I think it's going to be Jamal James. So Butaev needs to watch out for that. Nevertheless, it's a really, really good fight. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. Both guys are going to win rounds. Both guys are going to have their moments. But I've got to be honest, head to head, I think Butaev is a more skilled fighter. I think he's stronger, naturally more heavy-handed, a greater amateur background, and stylistically, I think this fight could favour him, especially if Jamal James goes to war and really trades. So I'm going to go with Radzhab Butaev to win this fight, and I'm going to say by knockout, more than likely late on, but I'm going to say a Radzhab Butaev knockout. What about you guys? How are you seeing this fight? I mean, nobody's talking about this fight, which is a shame. I know it's got a baby belt on the line, but take that aside, it's a really, really fun fight. If you can watch it, watch it. I'm looking forward to it. But share your picks below. Who do you believe is going to win this fight? Share your thoughts below. Peace.